President of Mexico chapter of ACMP. Thank you for being here today. Let me introduce Audra Proctor, who is one of the most recognized change management consultants in Europe, with more than 25 years of experience implementing projects around the world. Also, author of the book that promotes one of the main trends in our practice, which is enterprise change management. She is the director of Change First, a company that developed one of the most recognized certification, PCI, People-Centered Implementation, and creator of the only change management ERP which is possible to manage an entire change project called Roadmap Pro. I thank on behalf of the Mexico chapter of ACMP for the opportunity to give us his experience and knowledge on this day. Audra, thank you very much for this action, and I appreciate your support. And okay, begin with the webinar.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. I'm coming in from the UK. I think we have towards the end some time for question and your insight, but of course I'll try to check the chat function as I go through, and if I missed something that is important to you, please don't wait, just ask the question. I'm going to speak about enterprise change management. As Alberto said, I co-authored a book of the same title. The subtitle is How to Prepare Your Organization for Continuous Change. And so I'll share some thoughts from that. I'll talk a little bit about its practical application with clients. And I particularly will focus in on one client, and I'll explain why. I'd like to cover these three topics and then, open for question and insight. So I think we must start with a definition because it will kind of give us some boundaries for the conversation. I took the trouble to Google enterprise change management, and I was surprised once you get past the first 5 items that the slight variation of definition of the term. So I thought I'd start with a definition for us to anchor around. And because the subject matter looks at both enterprise change management and this idea of agility, I want to kind of put a definition there as well. I'll sort of outline what we see as key capabilities, what needs to be in place. We won't be able to go into all of them in detail, but I'm an email away. And then maybe at the end, just one slide on areas of focus. If you can focus on key things in key areas, what would they be? What are the key outcomes you're looking for? And then I'll leave some space for your questions and insights. So first of all, for definition, so if change management is about skills, processes, tools, being used to manage the people aspects of change, if that's what change management is, and we could agree on that as a working definition, then when I put the word enterprise ahead of it, it's about that capability being applied consistently across the organization. It's about the ability to scale that capability to suit different roles within the organization, different levels of power, and also different change situations. So if it's okay with you, I'm thinking about enterprise change management as consistency of capability across an organization. Change First, we work with global organizations. So when I say across, it could be across jurisdiction, across business unit, and so on. If I then look at the other word, which seems important to me, which is enterprise agility, what I propose to speak about is how an enterprise change management capability drives agility. then these skills and tools must be appropriate to the volume, the speed, and the precision required, the accuracy required to make good decisions. So as I think about agility, that's what I'm thinking about. There's the capability, but the capability must be accessible. It must be scalable. I must be able to flexibly pull and shove and mix and match based on the requirement. I've added the part about accuracy. More and more, our clients are needing, asking for very, very clear in articulation around responsiveness with data. So we're not unaccustomed to dealing with data and using data to drive decisions, but maybe we're less accustomed to using data that is people-centered, right? And you know, I understand that we are different. So there's nothing that I'm speaking about here that does not endorse the fact that individuals will struggle and their struggle will be different. But I also believe from a people perspective that patternicity, I don't know if there's a word in Spanish, but the notion of the pattern also applies to people. So there is something very heavy in the way that we operate with our clients and the requirements we hear around the use of data, people-centered data, to create a culture of data-driving decision-making so that we can adapt, we can renew, and we can innovate faster. So in those blue areas that you see on the screen is where I'm trying to put some definitions, some, I don't know, guardrails around our conversation. So that's definitions. If I think about capability, what needs to be in place? When we think about enterprise change management or enterprise agility, I think it's easy to think about a technology or a high-tech kind of organization, right? We need to be agile in technology. We are in the business of digital change management, so we understand this directly. We are only as good as the last product and the last release and users' ability to get value from that. So we understand this, I think, in terms of capabilities, the skills and the tools and the whatever to be able to be nimble in this way within a technological context. But, you know, my interest and what I want to share more with you about is how do we do that when we're dealing with an organization that is larger, that is successful. How does that sort of organization be agile to be able to take advantage of some of the digital capability that is available? How does an organization, and this is someone that we're working with, and so if you see the purple, you'll recognize it as their brand, someone like Siemens Energy, a giant. How do they bring agility to the way they work? What are the capabilities in that sort of setting for a big successful organization, whether now or in the past, so you'll think of your own examples, to become agile? How do they benefit from and take advantage of in their the energy transition and opportunities across a supply chain, if you will, to leverage new technologies? So that sort of organization can't work as a startup, right? There's too much stability and structure in there. That sort of organization can't reinvent the wheel. We can't have too much delegation in that sort of organization. That sort of organization has a strong backbone. And so how do we use that as a springboard to create agility in that sort of context? And as I talk about these capabilities, the word that comes to mind is dynamic. The capabilities that we are talking about here need to be dynamic within an organization like that. It needs to be a situation where change is, let me say, everybody's business. Everybody's business. You know, not just the special sauce, the special magic of a critical few within an organization like that, but it's everybody's business. And so the quote that you see here is directly from that organization. It's in the public domain. and you get an understanding of where I'm coming from. So I'm not negating the importance of what I'm saying within those already nimble organizations, tech startups and so on, but I'm really thinking about what we do within a, oopsie. There we go. So I think that I've drawn on the slide, so let me try and remove that. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little.
Es la que habla de enterprise.
Say it again.
No, it's okay. It's one microphone. Okay.
Okay.
Can
so
you please
there's some...
put, I'm sorry, Audrey, please, all the members, can you put your microphones in mute, please? Thank you. Sorry, Audrey, continue, please.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I can't really hear. There's a little drawing on the slide. I'm not sure that I did that, but let's just crack on. So I'll touch on 4 capabilities, if that's okay, which I'm showing on the slide here now. I'll touch on leadership mindset. I'll touch on resilience and adaptability. And this is all explored in some detail in the book. I'll touch on demand prioritization. I'll touch on learning and embedding capability, with not exclusively, but particularly with regards to methodology and digital enablement. All right? I'm not selling Change First's methodology. So whatever methodology it is, I'll talk about the value and the benefit of that, and similarly with digital enablement. So those are the 4 areas I'm going to explore. Let's start with leadership. This organization, they are called Diginomica. They are, I don't know, I think if you Google them, they kind of provide insights to leaders who are particularly in the digital era. They're operating their business in the digital era, and I thought they captioned it very well. They talk a fair bit. So I was introduced to them in 2015, but they continue to talk about characteristics that every organization, every business needs to be agile. And in this particular discussion that I was reminded of in preparing for you, it was about key digital culture characteristics that every organization needs to be agile. And I thought it fitted particularly well with this big, successful organization that I'm thinking about. And so you have these characteristics here, all right? So for agility, there is a need for collaboration, not siloed. So, you can think of organizations where they're actually moving from a siloed sort of organization into something that is more collaborative. To be responsive. They talk about openness and transparency. They talk about, a support for risk-taking and innovation. All right. I thought they captioned very well. It's not exclusive to digital transformation per se, but I think it's something around the mindset of leaders to be able to drive agility. So the mindset of leaders, which is why I titled it like this, is to encourage and actively support the following: collaboration, non-siloed working. And when I talk about encourage and actively support, it is about incentivizing, it is about reinforcing, so that real active, adaptive leadership to encourage and support these areas. Now, the common theme for me, and you may feel the same across these sorts of areas, is that it requires people at all levels to behave differently and adopt new ways of working. And as I see it, and the reason why I started with this slide labeled, right leadership mindset, is that this role modeling starts at the top. This kind of role modeling starts at the top, and then with a consistent cascade through the middle and frontline managers. So, the capability needs to reside within the leadership mandate with an appropriate mindset that will support enterprise investment, it will support enterprise agility, right? And so let me let me bring that down to something quite practical. And I think, Alberto, you know, sometime when we met, I may have shared this with you, you know, and it remains the same. So
Yes.
we are familiar with and continue to encounter 4 key leadership mindsets. I'm not saying that they're mutually exclusive, but these 4 I can clearly define and separate. The words I'm going to give you are on the next slide, but I just want you to make a note now. The first one is rational or logical, and I'll kind of outline the mindset. The next one is symbolic, and forgive me, these are my words to describe it. The third one is expert focused. And the fourth one is adaptive. Now, we all want to be working with adaptive leaders for sure. All right, but we have these mindsets along the way. So now let's show a little bit. So this slide, the text is really small, so please do lean in. As we have encountered the rational mindset, so we're saying that one of the important capabilities is to have leaders with the right mindset that will support agility within an organization. That first mindset of rational has the description you see in this left-hand column. Heavily driven by data and business case and proof, and the more formal aspects of project delivery. So I make the distinction between outputs and outcomes. So heavily focused towards delivery and outputs. The mindset, and I've taken a quote from leaders that I've heard, people are rational and will do the right thing. And if they don't, they will comply anyway. All this change stuff, this change management stuff is a bit soft and too heavy for us. And only 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with leaders who expressly said, is there a way to cut back on what we're doing on change management and get the same result? So there's a mindset around the logical, rational nature of people in our business who, with a good case for change, will get it. And so if we work down this, and I think about this mindset and the pace of change that we have in our organizations, with this project timeline and often training focused, this probably is sufficient for an environment that is slow and incremental when it comes to change. So if the landscape of enterprise agility is within a context of pace and volume and moving priorities. And so I put at the bottom here, this sort of thinking, this consideration will work fine within an environment that has slow change and incremental change. And what I mean by slow and incremental, we have time to finish one before we move on to the other. And I have to say that I can't think of an organization that I've worked with in that sort of scenario in the last 5 years, much less 10 years. I move on to symbolic, and sometimes when leaders are introduced to change management for the first time, the second time, the shift from left to right is to what I call symbolic. So these are my words, symbolic. So there is much more focus on communication of what needs to be done. And there is an interest and heavy investment in symbolism. And so once again, I say to you, I've taken a quote that I've heard. And so let's try to get as much buy-in as we can within the budget and time that is available. Ultimately, project timelines are crucial. So communication is the focus. I have no judgment on good and bad communication, but communication is the focus. And if I once again put this into the context of the environment of pace and multiple changes at one time, this is sufficient for an environment of continuous improvement. You know, just think about it. We need to kind of energize people to keep continuously improving the organization, small number of projects, improving operational excellence, and so on. So there's a focus on communication. And I have to say, you know, I know that sometimes change management equals communication for many leaders, but the caveat I'll put on that is, if I think about the real benefit that we get from communication, it is to help people to anticipate what is to come. That's what it does, right? So it helps people anticipate what is to come. It provides a form of indirect control, which is important during change, but that's what it does. And that is it, you know? And so, you know, I then kind of look and say, well, okay, what happens as we introduce more change management? What happens from a leadership mindset point of view? So I now introduce these other two. And I'm kind of bordering them because these are the kind of mindsets I think we want to work with. These are the kind of mindsets in organizations we want to work with. So I believe I labeled it the specialist. And this mindset has leaders providing active support for getting specialists, building centers of excellence to drive change. So I used the comment, I said, you know, change management becomes the special sauce, the special magic of a critical few within an organization. That's what I mean here. So that critical few can sit within HR, OD, or wherever, or it can sit within Center of Excellence for strategy and change. But if I then once again think of the quotes that I've heard, which I just literally lift and put here, you know, we'll get results if we have project plans with a strong people component. We need people to know how to do that. So we're moving in the direction of building capability, investing in capability, but it is in putting that capability in specialist areas, right? Expert change agent focus. And if I think about that in the context of change, the velocity, the multiplicity of change, it supports a programmatic change environment, So projects are part of a program, and the program is part of a whatever, where, you know, complex projects are resourced. So they will have change agents, they will be project managers, they may or may not be the same person, and there's active support to provide sponsorship, to provide legitimacy. And I ring fence that because I think that is great. And it should be, at a minimum, an area of focus for us. Now let's look at the right-hand side. So I have adaptive. Support for doing whatever it takes for change management to be adopted and applied as part of the institutional fabric. I have to say, you know, it would be wonderful to work with this type of leader, wouldn't it? It would be wonderful to work. And as I go look at the other capabilities, you'll see why this type of leader. Managing change is effectively a core competence in the organization. Assessing people's capacity and limits to change is a core part of our strategic decision-making. I think this has now opened up something for us in terms of capability. So it's not just about, with this one, a programmatic view on change management, putting skills in a particular place, but this is now about managing the ecosystem of change. And, you know, as you think about how you're working within your organizations, I guess my question or reflection to you is, where are you working? What are your leaders? Who are your leaders? Where do they sit on this kind of continuum? We're saying that if you have an organization such as the one I introduced, which is a transformational agenda, it is an agenda that is transformational. You know, we have, 18 layers of leadership that are going down to 8 or 12, I believe. You know, we have different ways to go to market. And let's just understand this. You know, there are parts of this kind of really established, successful organization, and you'll recognize these in your client portfolio, where they have long-term contracts with customers sometimes. Long-term contracts with customers, right? And so this kind of transformational agenda is met with some resistance because it's disruptive to a successful status quo. And so please do, you know, reflect on what kind of leadership am I working with, and what is the nature of change that I'm supporting, because that gives you a sense of where one needs to be. So we know that C-suite mindset will shape culture. And these quotes came from the board of an organization. All right, so I don't know if this can be a bottom-up situation really, but I do believe it changes everybody's business. Change management is everybody's business at an enterprise level. Then we need the right mindset, and I've kind of boundaried the ones on the right-hand side because I think that is the kind of mindset that will help us. So that's capability number 1. I'm looking, if you can see movement, it's because I'm trying to see you and see the slide, so I'm moving that about. So I want to kind of introduce this idea as capability number 2 about resilience and adaptability. I know that in our organizations now, particularly coming out of COVID, there's a lot of discussion around mindfulness and employee well-being. But I would like to be really practical about what we see as resilience and adaptability within an organizational context. When we talk about resilience, of course, we talk about the ability to bounce back, which sort of word is not new to us. We attach adaptability because that has to be the ability to learn from the experience, however difficult. And so we identify, and we're a research-based organization, so we identify 7 characteristics of people who are highly resilient. I don't know, think of who they might be. I don't know. I was speaking to someone the other day and they said, oh, that must be Oprah Winfrey. You know, so you think of resilience within an individual, it might you. And so I'm going to run around these 7 characteristics, and put a note in your thing. So optimistic, let me start there. Optimistic as a characteristic of a resilient or adaptable people says, I identify opportunity. When I hear change, I identify opportunity rather than threat. Are those the people that you're working with, right? Self-assured means that as I identify an opportunity, I may not have the skill now, but I know where to go find it, how to develop that. That makes me self-assured. Focused on the other side means there are a set of clear organizational goals and personal goals that I hold that will determine what I go for and what I don't go for, right? And I think I have a table with this on the next slide. So, open to ideas. It's a very interesting one. If you think of resilience and adaptability as both releasing energy and conserving energy, it is very energy releasing to be able to start with a blank sheet of paper and develop ideas for a change. And so when we talk a lot about engaging people in change, it's about that, right? That brings control, and there is a sense of resilience and adaptability associated with that. But we have to conserve. We don't have nearly enough capacity to deal with all the change in the world. So we have to then balance with conservation, which is about seeking support. And seeking support is saying basically that I understand where I am strong, and I can identify others who bring the strength to fill the gaps. So these characteristics are not just about an individual, but they're also about a team. It's about a business unit. It's about a geography. It's about people who have been hit by so much change that they're struggling to be resilient. And so that affects an enterprise's agility. Structured is about planning, as you might imagine, but it's also about teaching others how to do. So it has both that releasing and conserving of energy. And then I put proactive in the middle. Our research tells us that resilient and adaptable people are not jumping on every change opportunity. They're very discerning. And sometimes we confuse resilience with resistance because people are holding back. They are conserving energy, and they're waiting for the evidence that this change is a business imperative. All right. So these are the 7 characteristics, and it is what is important. So let's from an enterprise point of view, yes, it's about individual resilience and adaptability. But from an enterprise point of view, how do you operationalize that? It's also about hiring. When we are involved in, or we consult and we coach around recruitment, is resilience a feature in our hiring portfolio? Are leaders role modeling resilience? It is okay to say that we will wait and hold for more information. That is a resilient act, right? Are we training our leaders, training and coaching and reinforcing resilience when they see it? In addition to that, there's also about how do we strengthen the team to operate, because one of the characteristics is seek support, which means I need to bring my strength and the other strength, and together our resting heart rate or whatever is effective. And then there are two things down below, because, you know, I am resilient when I don't move because the change goals do not appear to be aligned. I am resilient when the change communication does not make a compelling case for change and I don't step forward. That is also resilience. So there's something around these characteristics, and whatever you use, we have something which I'll show on the next slide called the Personal Adaptability Inventory, and that's what it is. But I know that there are other resilience instruments out there, and this Personal Adaptability Inventory allows you to baseline just this. You know, how resilient is an organization? How resilient is a team? And as a result, what are the development actions required for agility? It has to be an important part of our consideration when dealing with enterprise agility and using change management. Resilience and adaptability is part of change management development. Remember, we are providing skills, tools, processes to address the people aspects of a major organizational change, and an important capability there is resilience. And resilience, you would say, is the foundation stone for all other things we're going to do, the skills we're going to add, the processes we will provide, and so on and so forth. I want to add one more thing. To the list, and I was taken by this with a recent, so it must be May, so you can see it's the Harvard Business Review. I've given you the reference there, so it must be May 2023, because I know that I read it recently, so I went to go find it. And in there, they talk about building in periods of rest to sustain energy. I think the work environment is different, and we're working from home. And so this notion of rest, you know, we recently got a notification from HubSpot. So we use HubSpot a lot for our marketing and ERP and sales and so on. And we got a notification that the system would be slow on a particular day because people are taking time off, and that was organized within the organization. And so this thing about resilience is a part of the way we work, a part of our people and HR strategies that make it okay for people to take time. And so there's something here. This is a capability, and I believe it's a building block towards other things within an organization. So I said that on this page, on the other page, I have something around resilience. So this is something that you can use in your own time. You know, here are the characteristics. Here are some considerations. The instrument that we use that does this kind of comparison asks people to rate themselves and talk about what they use a lot of and not so much of in these kind of key characteristics. But there's something very fundamental in enterprise agility building that we understand adaptability and resilience before we start to think about loading the organization. So I'm going to talk a little bit about loading, because that's another capability. I have to say that as I think about this other capability, which it is not always within our gift as change practitioners, I say practitioners, because as change leaders, it is absolutely within our gift. But as change practitioners, it is not often in our gift to deal with this particular consideration. So if I think of change management at an enterprise level, not change management generally, but particularly at an enterprise level, it is not just about the skills and tools to plan, deploy, and track individual changes. It's not just about that. What it is about the management of an ecosystem that has demand, it has capacity, and then it has initiative-specific risk. So an enterprise level capability, change management as an enterprise level, when I look at a plan and I see a transformational agenda, I'm looking for the action and activity around managing demand, the specific focused attention on building capability, where, when, how fast, and understanding and tracking initiative-specific risk. All right? And so this capability I'm going to talk about is one part of it, which the scribble is in the right place, which is about how we deal with the load. When we think about change, so this is about change demand and prioritization, I have no doubt that if we don't help local leaders to prioritize, they will prioritize anyway. And so I asked the question, I wonder where the real burden is when it comes to the demand being placed on the organization. Is it? And when I say the real burden, I mean, where is most of our capability being sucked up in an organization? Now, is it on enterprise critical changes, the ones that we say are business imperatives and must be done? Is it business as usual change, the stuff that's going on in local areas and jurisdictions to keep their business running, to keep their processes efficient? Or is it the regular rhythm of work? It's coming to the end of the financial year and we have a lot of things to do because that's the regular rhythm of work, And when we are speaking with organizations, the one in the middle is the one that is the real burden, because it is taking up, we have to backfill that. We have to take people out of that part to be able to work on changes that we perceive to be business critical. And so this on the right-hand side becomes really important. How do we prioritize? Before we can think about enterprise change management for a particular project that we have assigned as a business imperative, we got to think about what other things are taking people's attention, how we help them prioritize. Now, prioritization is not new to us. I'm sure we all have our various definitions for the axes and our models, but I just want to offer this one. And maybe it's a little provocative on the y-axis. So when I think of prioritization, and we do this with all our executives, I say, tell me of all the things, let's brainstorm all the things that you are sponsoring, you are aware of, that are critical to the business. It's important to understand with them how they fit with key strategic themes within the organization. And I wonder if this is within your gift to do, as if this is the kind of thing you're being invited in to support. But my very first question in working in change is, what are you going to give up so that this opportunity has the best chance of success? That's my very first question in organizations. My second question is, what is the history of doing anything like this successfully in the past? Right? So before we get started on the actual change itself that we're talking about, or the transformation agenda that we're talking about, I want to understand, what are you going to give up so that this one has a chance of success? And my y-axis is prioritize all those activities and events on a y-axis that has cost of failure. I'm not, benefits is attractive and all of that, but I want to understand, if we didn't do it, or we only did this work partially, what would be the worst that would happen, and for whom? Then I think the x-axis is what we would all expect, which is the risk of failure. Is it difficult, or is it easy to do? What is the risk of failing? And then, I would like to think that the topic that we're here to discuss in particular, this particular change, this particular transformation agenda, sits in the top right-hand corner. But it is only successful if we are able to do something with the bottom left and the bottom right. And so one of the important considerations for us at an enterprise level where agility is what we're looking to build, our change management service, our change management support needs to include resilience, I've just spoken about, and prioritization of demand. And how you do it, you'll have various, but this one is there for you to consider. Now, the third capability that I put on the list there was about learning and embedding capability. So it's about learning. And I put the quote on the left-hand side, really to remind me to say something to you. So if I think about learning, and hopefully maybe as we go back, I mentioned, you know, at this level, change management is everybody's business. And within an organization, everyone has a part to play. So here are some titles for you. You know, they will be sponsors. And sponsors are, quite crudely, people who can say go, no go, and are absolutely accountable for what happens and the benefits associated with that. That's what I mean, sponsors. And we know that if you have a hierarchical organization, that sponsorship moves its way through the spine with every supervisor, line manager, country leader, regional leader, and so on. We have another group we call agents of change, which is largely the work that we do unless we are a leader in the organization. And you know, with that word agent of change, it could be a project manager, it could be a people professional, it could be a dedicated change manager, but that role is about responsibility for how stuff gets done. How stuff gets done, what's the plan, what's the time, how stuff gets done. We have recipient organizations led by managers who must take those plans, tailor them, and implement them in their local jurisdictions on their own or with the help of local champions, right? And so they are reinforcing sponsors, they're local change champions. And then we have individuals who need to figure out what's important, what's the priority, and bring their best resilient, adaptive self to the change agenda. And so learning and support needs to be role relevant. Some years ago, and I think it is still true, you know, the given statistic was that at best 30% of what we learn is actually retained. So there's something in it about learning being by doing. I think the reason why they're workshops and not broad brush learning is because learning needs to have some sense of application. We have to learn the concept, we need to apply it to something, we need to see immediate value and all of that. And then, of course, learning needs to be just in time. So if you got your learning strategy and you're thinking about what is it that we need, role relevant, learn by doing just in time and with immediate application. And then as we think about the roles, we think about what is the span of control for those individuals. So what is the power that executives have that we desperately need to unlock? And as such, what learning do they need from a change management point of view to be able to give you that control? So for example, a boot camp for us with an executive is understanding the process, understanding the questions they must ask to figure out the risk and track progress, understanding their role as a sponsor, understanding the limits of the responsibility of others and supporting that. And that might be different for different roles. And so this quote reminds me to say to you that, you know, change management, learning and embedding of capability has to be as important and enough and robust for this small expert community that was the case with this railway organization we supported, as it is for project and program managers and line managers in the train routes. It has to have that consistency about it, right? And this, and I'm supposed to help with this, and that's what it has to be. It has to be to help. It has to be a means to an end. Methodology is important. I'm showing ours, but you know, you have access to different methodology, and I'm showing this quote to remind me to say something. Methodology for me, and I have to say, before I joined Change First some 20-something years ago, I was within a team, and the decision we needed to take was to whether to buy in a method or build in our own method. And so learning and embedding at an enterprise level is about whether there is appetite to build. And we're wondering whether there is value in reinventing the wheel. I mean, you know, our methodology is one of 3, I think, or 4, that a few years ago, Forrester says, well, these are the 3 or 4 that are being used globally around the world. So you must know who these people are, right? And so the question is, does it serve our learning and embedding of capability to build, or do we need to buy? So methodology is important. I mean, the only thing, what I will say about our methodology and the reason why it's structured in this way, and I'm not saying it's different to others, but I'm just going to speak to that. The methodology for us needs to speak about the craft of change management, because that's what it is. It is a craft. And so the blue section, top left, which is about a shared purpose. So we know that change happens when it makes contact with people, right? And so they need to have a shared sense of purpose, direction, messaging, what's the vision, what's the this, what's the that. However, that message hasn't quite landed unless it goes through and survives the red section. So this relationship between the organization's desires and the local requirement to be effective is important. And that red section is, if I bring that message to my local reality, I use the example of a local, a regional business that has long-term relationships with customers, 15-year contracts. So a transformational message from the center is going to struggle to land and create energy to move when we're already successful locally. And so similarly, you know, leadership at a board level or where needs to kind of survive the orange section, where local managers who are dealing with budgeting, delivery of results, together with localizing of changes, need to know that they can actually do all those things. And so this learning and embedding of capability has to have real skill and process and understanding of what to do, when to do, how to do in each of those areas. Now, okay, so you know, as we were coming on, I was speaking with Alberto about this, and so if you've seen anything about change management, there'll be no surprise that we are digitally enabled. And I have to say that in today's environment, where change is multiple, we don't have time to stop with one before we start another, where we have disparate workers, digital enablement has been the way for us to provide consistency across an organization. So if learning and embedding capability, remember at an enterprise level where we say skills, processes, and tools are consistently available across an organization. So people, regardless of their role, you know, would have just what they need to bring the power that they have to the change environment. Digital capability has to be the way to reach those people cost effectively, quickly. And so, you know, that's certainly the our impetus for digital enablement, for investing in digital capability, where we can have people in different localities, different jurisdictions, and we can all work on a change project together. We can all go in and learn what needs to be done, because our learning needs to be just in time, and then figure out what is the part of the plan that needs to be updated and refined. And that shouldn't have geographical limitations. You shouldn't have face-to-face limitations. One of the things that our clients are asking more and more for is dashboarding capability, the ability to see what's happening at a glance. I'm showing you images that will reflect that. How do we know where the big risks lie? how do we know the completion levels and the milestone levels, and that being real time, then being able to drill down a little further and figure out who's leading this project and who do I need to speak with for more information. Look, I know we can bring it to SharePoint and we can put it on an email and we can traverse it around the organization. But if speed is required for agility, if the ability to quickly scale the capability to local needs is required, then I believe as a discipline, we need to embrace digital enablement as much as possible. Now, I haven't been looking at the chat function, so I don't know of your thoughts and views, but I'd like to kind of think about areas of focus for us in the change management field. And if I think about the capabilities for enterprise agility, we spoke of resilience. We spoke of the ability to prioritize demand, to consider the ecosystem of change, not just an individual project, but to prioritize demand and to take a strategic view on dealing with capability. We spoke about learning and enablement, and to think about how we deal with projects through process and method. We spoke about, and it's very important to us, we do more work in this area to track, to understand risk, to use data to drive our planning through digital enablement and it is called Roadmap Pro. So as I think about us and where this is important to us, I've pulled together some areas of focus and what I call key outcomes. I think in our support and work with leaders, the outcomes that we're going for, the areas of focus for us is that we provide so that our leaders can assess and manage the change load and establish clear priorities for their organization. That has to be an important part of what we provide so that they can. I believe with leaders, sponsoring change management is an important concept to be discussed. It's a core competence to be built throughout the organization, because everywhere there is a leader, there is a sponsorship requirement, whether to initiate something or to reinforce. Now, when I say sponsorship, I wonder what comes to mind for you. When I think of sponsors, if I get into the nitty-gritty, I don't know what is the Spanish term for nitty-gritty. If I get to the details of it, sponsors are, yes, charismatic and such like, but I'm thinking about the fact that they actually support the future state. And they demonstrate that in their talking and their action. I'm thinking about sponsors who are leading role modeling. I'm thinking about sponsors who provide resources where there's an obvious gap. I'm thinking about sponsors who will network with their colleagues to ensure doors are opened and things happen. I'm thinking about sponsors who will encourage openness by asking the first difficult question. I'm thinking about sponsors who are dissatisfied with the status quo, and that's an important part of their communication. I'm thinking of sponsors who are interested and tuned into people impacts during change and are asking us for information, data about that so they can make the right decision. As I think of sponsors, I'm thinking about that detail and sponsors understanding that, I don't know how else to say it except to say that there is a gun and there is bullets, and sponsors have that bullet to put into the gun, and as a change agent, we fire and we can't be successful without them. That's what I'm thinking about as sponsors. And I'm not thinking about individuals or teams who declare victory too soon during change, who talk about buy-in but don't think about commitment as we understand it, which is institutionalized stuff, internalized stuff, continuously improving because we are committed. So I'm very precise in my use of the word sponsoring. I think leaders are ensuring that there is sufficient capacity. Either they build it in or they buy it in. So it's time, budget, resource, skill, and tool that is available to drive business change. This is our area of focus. We give so that they can. I also did the same thing at different levels, because middle and frontline managers are, we give so that they can develop and replenish resilience of their staff. And my experience is that middle and frontline managers are underinvested in. And in many ways, they are the custodian and holder of culture. And so I've taken it away from change as we understand it, the project plan and so on. They are dealing with the individual who comes into the office and says, what does this mean for us? And we can't cope because there's too much. And so for middle managers, we give, our service needs to enable them to develop and replenish the resilience and capabilities of their staff to meet the challenges ahead. And I've done the same thing with project and change managers, us and our counterparts within organizations, if we're consulting, or our team members within the Center of Excellence. We give so that they can collaborate to plan and deliver change. And so this collaboration could be limited, right? Because we're scattered across the world and we're in different places. And that's why digital capability brings us together. We give and we explain and we teach and we share so that they can provide credible data and reporting and so on. We give so that there are methods, frameworks, and tools that can be repeated across different changes. And I've done the same. I mean, there's a fair bit, and we don't have time to go into it, that is spoken about the role of HR within change and agility in this world. We give so that they can make role-relevant change training available quickly. We do a lot more train the trainer now than we have done before. We give so that they can align performance indicators, incentives, and rewards with business transformational goals. One of the important engagement processes within a change context is incentives and rewards. So we give so that they can. I'm pausing because when I set out, I said I'll talk about three things and then come to questions and insights from you, comments. And those three things were definition, the capabilities, and then areas of focus, key outcomes for us. So I've come to the end of that. And I'm going to open for comment and question.
There is a question from Alberto. What is the best way to develop internal capabilities in leaders to manage change process by themselves?
Yeah. Well, I suppose there are two things. I mean, the developing of capability is about giving them access to stuff, information, what does best practice look like, and so on. But it's also about the attitude that they want to control and develop it themselves. I think, we deliver a lot of training, but you can go 6 months and then people are still struggling. So I think just in time, if there's a project, we support and develop capability at that point so that they can apply the learning to that particular situation in real time. I do believe that that has to be the way to build internal capabilities. And I think leaders need to come in with that mindset. I'm going to learn how to lead my team through local change. That would be my response to that question.
Thank you, Audra.
You're very welcome.
Any other question? Okay, thank you very much, Audra, for your time, for your knowledge, your experience. Thank you very much. We appreciate your support. And I think it's
you
very
very much.
interesting to know what is this approach about enterprise change management. Thank you very much, everyone, to attend this session, and see you the next webinar. Thank you, Audra, for
You're
this.
very welcome.
Webinar.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
all.
much, Audra.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Audra.
Thank you.